Hello, everyone. Testing 1, 2. Wonderful. The Human Rights and Equity Commission, today, January 29th, 2025 hybrid meeting is called to order at 4:31 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Reminder throughout the meeting, please announce your name before making any comments. I'm Agatha Ventura, she, her. This is for accessibility and names of people who are talking for people not able to view on a screen. My self-description, and I'll begin to give us a little example. Agatha Ventura, she, her. I am wearing a multicolored jacket with a gray turtleneck. I am a Latina woman with my hair up and wearing glasses. And I'll pass it over to Councilor Connector Jackie Curry.
Jackie, present, she, they pronouns. I'm a mixed Native person with long brown hair in braids and a jean jacket.
Thank you. Commissioner Connector Scott Jones.
Hello, everybody. Scott Jones, he, him. I am a white male with dark hair, with gray highlights, and I'm wearing a brown plaid collared shirt.
Thank you. Adrian McDougall, she, her. Commissioner.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person today. My name is Adrian McDougall. I am a Hispanic female. I am wearing a black sweater and I have long black hair and big headphones on.
Thank you. Commissioner Cameron Fisher.
Hi, Cameron Fisher, she, her. I'm a white woman with a green sweater and kind of auburn hair. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Carly Colgan.
Present, she, her. I am a white woman with short dark hair and glasses, a blue shirt.
Thank you. Eli Lowenstern.
Present. Hello, I'm Commissioner Eli Lowenstern. Tall white man, curly short black hair, wearing a yellow sweater and a green jacket. And pronouns are he, him.
Thank you very much. Linda Heimer.
Hello, Linda Hemer, pronoun she, her. I am wearing a black vest with a cranberry turtleneck. I am a white female, glasses, short brown hair.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Heimer. Ruth Bernotico.
Ruth Nautico, pronouns are they, she, he. I am a white man with blue eyes and a mustache, non-binary. I'm wearing a green hat today with a lanyard, tan t-shirt, and a blue flannel jacket.
Thank you very much. Vanessa Covington.
She's not online.
Thank you. And we'll move over to introduce our city staff.
Lisa Larson, she, her, a Hispanic woman with long black and gray hair, more black than gray, and I'm wearing a white shirt.
Andres Portela, pronouns he, him, Equity and Inclusion Director for the City of Bend and Staff Liaison to ATREC. I'm wearing a Glen check blazer with white and blue striped shirt underneath. I have beautiful brown skin and a curly black short afro.
I'm Ian Lighthizer, he, him, City Attorney's Office. I'm a white man with shortish brown hair, wearing a gray jacket and a blue and white striped tie.
Thank you. Any others?
Hi, Lindsay Lubowski, pronouns she, they, Equity Department staff. I am a 6 foot tall person with a navy blue blazer and a fresh big C cut and glasses. Yeah.
Megan Perkins, pronouns are she, her. I'm a Bend City Councilor wearing a blue blazer, white shirt, and white lady, long blonde hair.
Have I gotten everyone?
Good evening, Commissioners. Cassandra Kehoe, Accessibility and Equity Manager. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I am calling in virtually this evening.
Welcome. Good to see you. One more online, I believe.
The attendee, is that what you're wanting?
Elise is city staff.
Hmm?
Elise is city staff.
Matt is.
Elise? Okay. We can just move forward.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. At this point, we will move into our land acknowledgement. If someone would like to volunteer to read it out loud for us,
I'll read it.
please.
This is Jackie. We would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, north of the Columbia River, is the original homeland of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated Tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Wanalama, Warm Springs, Wasco, and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. It is our hope that guests continue to honor and care for this land.
Thank you very much. Moving into HREC business. May I please have an approval of minutes for last?
This is Commissioner Radico. I make a motion
Thank
to
you.
approve minutes for us.
Thank you.
This is Carly, I'll second.
Thank you.
Are those for both months?
Both months?
Fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That'll be for both months. And we will move into, all those in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any in
Aye.
opposition? Thank you. The motion moves. Is approved. Perfect. Then we'll move into reviewing the agenda for today. Yes, please.
Okay, cool. Andres Portela, Equity and Inclusion Director. For today, we have a refresher of roles, responsibilities in the city of Bend. There are some documents that were attached to that. You have the City of Bend Basics, which goes through a brief overview. Additionally, we'll have the city attorney, Ian Lighthizer, doing a presentation on that. Then you'll have the continued work plan discussion led by myself. And then a discussion in new business under the growth plan, which it is new business, but it's also old business. We talked about this during our last meeting. And then follow up with roundtable and discussion. Yeah.
Very much. So any questions there, or we will move into the standing item with our council liaison, Councilor Megan Perkins.
This is Jackie, just real quick, not a question, but just to let you all know, I have to leave like 5 minutes early tonight. Just a heads up.
Oh, it's one of those, I think I've told a couple of you this, but my favorite response for the last couple of weeks is someone said, "How are you?" to someone else, and they said, "I don't know how to answer that." And I feel like we're all feeling a little bit of that. And I guess I just wanted to start by, I know that every single one of you, whether it's your workplace or your children or your own identity, has been affected over the last couple of weeks by this terrible fear and division. And I just want to say I support you and I feel that for you. And yeah, I'm just terribly sorry that we're all in this place right now. And I feel very comfortable expressing the support of the entire council in this commission, and in our equity department, and that we will be continuing this work. It may be called something ridiculous, but we will be continuing this work as we go into our goal setting process, and just know that you have our support. And I don't really know what else to say beyond that. And I'm happy to if we just want to have a conversation right now, talk about things that you would like to see from me or from council. Talked a little bit to Jackie before we met tonight, or meeting tonight. Or I can just go right into it, but I will leave it up to you all. What would you like to talk about right now?
I would like to first give folks a little second to take that in while I thank you for bringing that into the space, because that's always really hard as a leader. I think in our workspaces and wherever we're having these conversations, it's always hard to say the thing. So I'm grateful personally and professionally and as a member of this community, and open the space to everyone else for what we want to talk about.
Can we scream? No. Linda Hemer, she, her, Commissioner Hemer. Just thank you for acknowledging that and for letting us hold space for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Bernalico, a preface to what I'm about to ask, because it may not be appropriate for City Council, but in what ways does City Council interact with and/or create policy for Ben Parks and Recs?
In no way.
In no way. Okay.
They are their own separate governing body. They have their own separate board, budget, employees.
Yeah, okay. I ask because in my experience since inauguration, been experiencing a lot of really uncomfortable stuff at Ben Parks and Recs facilities, especially at Juniper, in the park at Juniper, at Riverbend Park. And I'm wondering, like, you know, I've had a couple of conversations with Kayla, who heads Juniper Fitness Center, and their hands are truly tied in so many ways based on the policies of this, you know, whatever the board is, the governing body of Ben Parks and Recs. You know, to the point, like, someone was saying things and they literally just kind of couldn't remove the person from the building. And I'm just wondering where the teeth are there. As we begin to navigate these spaces in the world and this new world that we're finding ourselves in, like, in what ways is the city interacting with and Ben Parks and Recs interacting with the public, and how are they helping protect folks on places that we would consider to be public or city property?
If
If I can jump in, this is Ian Lighthizer from the City Attorney's Office. And
Hey,
it's Counselor.
Ian,
Yep.
would you be willing to come closer to a mic
I
so the
am
folks
looking
online
to
can
come
hear
closer
you?
to the mic.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be cautious about getting too into this, because as Counselor Perkins said, the city of Bend and Bend Park and Recreation District are completely separate entities, different governing bodies, different employees, different statutes that apply to them. I will say Bend Park BPRD, the Parks District, they do have their own rules regarding conduct, behavior, other things, use of their facilities. I'm not in a position where I can speak to those. I've looked at them for various reasons over the years, but they do have a set of rules. So they have the authority to adopt rules. They've done that. I can't tell you everything they say about conduct on park property and at park facilities, but I know they do have rules regarding conduct, and presumably would say they have some authority to enforce those rules. I can't can't speak to that. I'm a little bit reluctant to even point it out, but they've got rules on their website. So if anybody is interested, you can use your favorite search engine and find their rules. And if questions come up, hopefully there's somebody at BPRD who can address them.
I also want to, Andres Portela, he, him, Equity and Inclusion Director. I also want to talk about the Hate Speech and Discrimination Coalition work that has been taking place predating this moment. I'm going to give a longer, in-depth discussion about this, but we are working with a nonprofit in this moment to figure out how we as a city continue this work. I say that because when we started to build that coalition, community members surfaced that is the city the right convener of this, a space in which the city has a lot of power, and that power dynamic becomes a little bit skewed once we are the one sharing the space. And so from that, we've taken a step back and really looked at how do we empower a nonprofit to take that work. It is going to continue giving the resources that ATREC created about a year and some change ago, 2 years ago. Goodness gracious. Additionally, continuing the work of connecting folks with ODOJ's bias incident reporting process, and then also doing a little bit of on-the-ground triage. So that is in the works. It is still happening. I hope to have really great news on a nonprofit that is taking that work here in the next few weeks.
Agatha Ventura, she, her. That reminds me of something I've been thinking about and trying to action in my own doing of this work is as we're considering education, programming, different events, sort of discerning when our approach is to build community and when our approach is to build some sort of educational moment so that there's opportunity for both. Because I'm finding sometimes the message gets a little blurred with like, see, nobody else agrees. Shout out to Nextdoor. And I think
You were very brave on Nextdoor, by the way. I saw that. Oh,
it's puppies and human rights for me.
yes.
But I just want to remember also as we create these events that we're considering who the event is for or who the program is for.
Mhm. And if you had not heard, and please pass along to as many people, the LCA is doing, I think, 2 different presentations this weekend, one for employers and employees on Saturday at the library, I think, and then there's one on Sunday. And I think that's just for the general public, know your rights. So these are going to be really, really important because I know that a lot of businesses are also wondering what to do. And I'm really, really, really pleased that I just saw an email from the chamber that just came out while we were in this meeting, or right before, saying, here are your rights, here are these great events. And I'm really pleased to see that. That's a big step forward for the chamber. So
I'm also going to hop in and say I'm working right now to get a presentation that's going to be given by ODOJ to come to ATREC in March.
Great.
So that they can provide just a little bit of information on the resources they've been collecting, have been working on and refining up to this point. So trying to get them for our March meeting.
Cameron Fisher, she, her, and thank you again for what you shared. I want to say 2 things, and one going back to Ruth, just circling back to wrap that up. I do think for everybody on this commission, it is a level of responsibility as being a member of HREC to use our voice.
Yes.
And for organizations or agencies or to reach out, and for Parks and Rec, they have a board. And tying that you are affiliated with HREC would be really helpful when you reach out to that board, every single one of those board members individually, so they
Yes.
all know your concerns.
Yes.
I think that's kind of our role as, when you're talking about community awareness. And so that, and then Megan, when you were mentioning kind of this ridiculous language that may be necessary, right, to revamp or reshape things, I guess I want to have, I think I have your assurance, but I'm hoping that all of us have that assurance from you representing City Council that that is a priority, that this is not going to be, let's run away and.
No, it is an
and,
absolute priority.
Okay. And to utilize HREC in.
Yes, yes. I don't know how many of you were able to see the Reverend Tutu. Was that just a couple of days ago? I think it was just a couple of days ago. And Jackie and I just talked about this, but at the very end, I thought it was really powerful when Bola asked her, you know, what about this, you know, these executive orders saying, you know, you have to take the equity out of, you know, out of your government and this and that. And the Reverend Tutu said, it's the words are not what matters. The words are there to cause division. It's the work that matters. And so I really took that to heart too. As long as we're still doing the work, we can't get bogged down by fighting over the words right now, because we are in an emergency. We're not in a time that we've been in. So I am here before you to say that we're going into goal setting, you know, next week on Monday and Tuesday. We've been hearing a lot from the community, but if there is anything that you would really like to make sure that I emphasize beyond sort of what we've talked about before, or just more say like, please, please, please do this or bring this up. I am there for you, and I will be there as an advocate on Monday and Tuesday. So please email me or call me or anything. And that's the real bulk of our work. And I think there are things coming up for council and things we've been talking about, but I think this idea of goal setting is where we really need to put, you know, all of our emphasis right now, because that's going to set the plan for the next 2 years. And once it's there, and you don't take it out. I don't think I've heard of it being taken out. I've ever like just gotten rid of a strategy or a goal before.
Sometimes there are refinements. that can
Refinements,
sit,
yes,
but it
okay.
Depends how things unfold.
Yeah. So, and I know that our legal department has been very busy over the past couple of weeks. And, you know, what everybody is saying is let's just see what sticks. Let's see what gets, yeah, let's see what gets through and what doesn't, what's legal, what's not. And, you know, the whole idea of all of this is just to create an immense amount of fear in our community, and it's working.
This is Commissioner Bernardico. Question, how can we as a committee help support you and the council?
I think just talking about the importance of this work, and I say this work, you know, as like an amorphous term, but like this work, it's important. And I think everybody on council believes in this, but I think they really need to hear maybe some why. You know, like this is important to the people in this community, not just as a concept, right? Because we always talk about it as a concept, like, oh, we should be welcoming, we should create belonging, we should be equitable. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean to someone walking down the street in our community right now, or trying to go to work every day? So I think that would be helpful, and communicating that before we go into goal setting, so it's fresh on everybody's mind would be great.
You mean before Tuesday? Is that what you're saying?
Monday and Tuesday are our goal setting days.
Okay, so is that, you're saying for us to communicate that with the council before?
That would
Monday,
be
Tuesday?
great. Yes.
In the next few days?
Yes.
And is that our, what is that, the connector? What's the role? Is that the council connector that we should be sharing? Is that the way? We should be doing that? Are you, who's council connector?
Jackie is, yeah.
So would you like us to like share our thoughts with you and then you, or am I missing something?
This is Jackie. From my understanding, it would be just as meaningful, important, powerful to just even like email, like on your own individually, like visual statements.
Yep.
I am happy to, like, if anybody does want to like email me things or talk with me about things, and then like I can put together something like collectively. But yeah, I
think
It may add it, it might be tougher to do it collectively,
Yeah.
given our time frame.
Yeah.
So it may behoove us to try
Yep.
individually. This one.
Okay, thank you. One other question.
Yeah.
So for that goal setting, do you have a draft, an agenda, something that we can look at right now?
I have not seen an agenda. I'm assuming it's coming. Usually it's a day and a half. Usually starts with like setting ground rules, for how we're going to interact with each other. And then there's a lot of like, paper on the wall, get in small groups, this, that, and that. And then by the end of the first day, have some basic ideas of where we're headed with some of the strategies. And then the next day is about refinement. And the second day is always harder than the first, because that's when a lot of people are saying like, but I want to do that. The first day is a little bit more peace and love.
Okay, so I'm just taking this a little bit further here.
Yeah.
So I don't get much response when I reach out to city councilors.
Yeah.
And so I would like to have some sort of, something that that's graspable, is that a word? In the meantime, to kind of mull through and think about before I email, because I'd like it to land where actually people listen to me. And so how can we do that without, I'm guessing it's on camera, your
Yeah.
goal
Oh,
setting,
yeah. The whole thing. will
without
be- oh, yeah.
sitting there for a day and a half. How
yeah.
can we get ahead of this? Does that make sense? I mean, how do we?
So there have been some opportunities, and this Andres Portela, Equity Inclusion Director, I just forwarded y'all some council goal, open houses that took place over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Again, I apologize that they were sent to you so last minute. They were,
That's the email today?
no, this was about 2 weeks ago when I said that there was the pop-up on Friday, an event on Saturday at the Council on Aging, and then
Oh, right.
Monday at the library. In our discussions about how do we make this process, refine it this time to our next time, we've identified that giving more lead time is our best bet. So we're going to do that going forward. I think additionally, we've had conversations in this space around council goals, and a lot of that has influenced the equity department's asks going into that space. So some of that connection has already been made. The council goals that already include equity are our supplier diversity programs, those resources for hate and discrimination that was in the ATREC work plan as well. The equity framework, and we're going to be creating our own equity framework that complements the one that's for staff. And additionally, there's language access plan, in which we'll get a presentation at our next meeting. So in thinking about council goals, some of the asks from the equity department, and again, they're going to be refining over the next few months. Some of our asks have been around ADA and accessibility. How do we create spaces that are universally designed, and thinking about our transition and self-evaluation plan, are those different studies that are going to take place. Additionally, moving forward, our supplier diversity program as a part of council goals, and some community engagement and embedding equity within other spaces. But I think really the ways that your voice and advocacy can take place in emailing council all are really thinking about the ways that we've advocated either here in the summit and in other ways that we've interacted with the city, and just crafting a narrative that talks about your experience and how you've interacted with the city, and how the counselors can create process or think about the global state of council goals, so that they feel informed by individual constituents. And that's, I'm sorry that that feels a little bit like fluid, but I think that is our direct connection in this moment. They'll come out of their retreat with a revision of what the departments have put together, and the stuff from the individual pop-ups. I will try my best to cue us in to when it comes to council and there's a discussion at council, so that we are informed of when they're going to talk in a public setting about this, either showing up and talking about our connection to ATREC. But I think those are some really tangible points in which we can bring into council goals. Ian, I know that you were going to state some things.
Yeah, the edge of my seat. Ian Lighthizer again. I will say, for those of you who want to email council by Monday, when this goal setting retreat starts, yes, you're encouraged to do it. I think a place to start is look at the 2023 to 2025 goal documents. We have a very high level poster up on the wall over in the corner, but go find those documents, see what they look like. And this isn't too much of a telegraphing, and I don't think I'm completely out of line in saying that, you know, we have a new council every 2 years. Sometimes there are big changes in terms of policy priorities. Sometimes there aren't, but the needs of the community change or the priorities of the community change. This new council is not that different in many ways from the council that put together the 23 to 25 goals. So I think some of what you might want to do, if you want to get your 2 cents or more in soon, is look at the 2023 to 2025 materials, really understand how the goals are built, and look at those with an eye towards what you might want to see more of, less of, or continuation of in the next biennium. Because I think that 23 to 25 document and materials provide a little bit of a foundation for where the city might go, with some adjustments subject to what council wants to sort of raise, lower, emphasize here, de-emphasize there. But my guess, and this is up to the 7 of you, is that it may not look that different. I mean, maybe some reorganization, maybe reframing some things, but a lot of the same concepts are probably, we didn't solve all the problems of the community in 2 years, right? So some of the same things are going to continue to be in the next set of goals, I think. So that's a place to start.
Yeah, and there was a community survey that we just got a presentation about. One of it was a statistically valid survey, and the other was an opt-in survey. And the issues in the community that 2 years ago, it's basically the same. You know, people, it's housing, homelessness, and then people are really upset about congestion, traffic congestion, and other transportation things. And generally just very angry at growth, which is, as you're about to see, as you know, we have to accommodate for growth. So that's just more of, what was it like, growth? I don't like it. Was that what we decided the tagline was? I think for that council.
In Oregon, people don't want sprawl and they don't want density.
Yes.
None of the above.
None of the above, yeah.
And that's a good reminder that equity to be baked in is sort of in how you do a lot of things. Right?
Yes,
So consider how you're
exactly.
affected with all of these plans that you know are coming up.
Yes.
Your microphone. But thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor
Sorry to
Perkins.
take so much of your
No,
time.
no, this was very helpful, I think, for everybody.
Right,
Yes.
just add, this is Jackie. Just 2 things real quick. Number 1, Councilor Perkins just said this, but I watched was it just last week? The
yeah,
22nd?
it
Time is so weird right now. I watched that council meeting, and a lot of what I saw the community members bringing up was housing, transportation and infrastructure, cost affordability, and fire specific.
A lot of fire, yeah.
Stuff. So,
Yep.
Just to put that out there.
Mhm.
And then, number 2, just kind of reiterating what Agatha just shared. If there's a way to remind council around the value piece of the work, and how can that be, is there somehow to bake that into the goals?
Yes.
Because it's more than goals and different than
Yeah.
goals, but also like, how and where does the values come in, and how can we portray that and use that as a base?
Mhm.
All of that really helped bring those kind of, points together. So thank you, all 3 of you.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll pass it over to city staff to facilitate public comments. I'm sure we'll get some more great feedback. Yes.
Read it.
There's one online.
So I'm going to read the statement for public comment. Public comment during the Human Rights and Equity Commission is intended to be a welcoming and inclusive towards all speakers of the public, to create an atmosphere of mutual care and respect. These meetings often offer an opportunity to provide public input for community and to share their opinions with leadership. However, they are not time to level personal attacks or threats, disrupt the meeting, use obscene, vulgar, or discriminatory language, or discourage anyone else from participating. While community members may disagree with each other or the city on a particular issue and give critical feedback, they are also expected to do this respectfully in accordance with the rules. This advisory body will hear 5 public comments for 2 minutes, 2 minutes for 10 minutes total. If a speaker exceeds the allotted time, they will be asked to pause or be muted to advance the meeting. With that, there is one person online.
Hey, Matt Muchna? You can unmute.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Thanks for the moment. Matt Muchna, he, him, representing Envision Bend, but more than that, community member here in Bend. In the last few years I was in Redmond, but just wanted to speak to this body and say thank you for the work you're doing, and just joining tonight more to be a fly on the wall and get a better sense of this body's goals and work plan. And I think also looking along with other partners, how are we talking and navigating current times, and just wanting some more opportunities to engage and help where I can. So just wanting to open that invitation and say thank you all, and that's it. Just appreciate the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you. That is it for online. Is there anyone in council chambers that would like to speak during public comment? You can say no. Okay, there is no one in council chambers. I will pass it back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. We very much appreciate your comment. And I will move us to old business, starting with a refresher, role, responsibilities, and the city of Bend with Ian.
Ooh, third time. Ready. Hi, everybody. Ian Lighthizer, City Attorney's Office. It's good that this is called Old Business. We did a version of the presentation I'm about to share, roughly a year ago. Andres and I thought it made sense to consider revisiting it, in part because we have enough new members of the commission that we thought might appreciate getting a little bit of a, let's say, a pretty basic high level breakdown of what the city is and how this structure of our particular local government works. So I'm going to walk through some of this. A lot of this content is similar to content I have presented in a sort of an internal employee focused educational program that we do for new supervisors at the city to help them get a really broad look at a lot of things that we hope will be helpful to them as they are supervisors or managers or become supervisors and managers. One thing I hear frequently when I do this from a lot of folks is, I had no idea how the city really, how all the pieces fit together, even from people who have worked here for a long time and maybe have been managing a program or doing a particular thing and doing it really well, but didn't really have, a lot of people just haven't had an opportunity to get a view of how the whole structure works together. So we thought it's actually probably also helpful for our advisory bodies and members of our advisory bodies, particularly new ones, to understand it as well. So I think we have 30 minutes on the agenda. That's I'm gonna say 5:35, 5:40, hopefully, and we can get through it. And ask me questions anytime. Are you, you think, you don't think I can do it? Seems. Okay, I thought it was about the time and some joke about me going over time. Okay, that's fine. Tell jokes or ask questions at any point. Okay. What are we trying to do today? And this is my opinion. What I would like us to walk away with is an understanding of the basic structure and functions of the city. so that you can sort of have those things in mind as you do the work. And some of that is so, I'll be honest, some of that is so you are not disappointed with not getting enough done. I think if you know how the city is put together and you know how decisions get made and who makes them and sometimes why the decisions are ahead of time, you can focus your energy in the right way to get things done and not run into roadblocks because we're not thinking about how something is actually going to work, or maybe who has the authority to make particular decisions, or even what cities can do. So what does a city do? This is not necessarily an exhaustive list, but this is a list of primary things that the city of Bend, and I would say other cities in Oregon, do. Some of these things are mandated by state law. There are certain things cities have to do. The first thing I put up here is regulating land use. That is something that cities in Oregon have to do. State law says we have to do things. We have to do things in a certain way. Some of those things are substantive. Some of those things are procedural. But the way I look at it, that really kind of involves, and it's a little more complicated than this, but it involves a couple of things. There's long-range planning and there's current development. Long-range planning, what is the city going to need to do? What is the city going to need to plan for 10, 20 years out down the road? And a lot of effort and a lot of time goes into planning for those projected realities that we think Bend is going to see or is going to need to accommodate in the future. I often hear or read, when I make the mistake of dipping into comments on a screen somewhere, that nothing is planned in the city and things just happen. And oh my goodness, I go nuts every time. Internally, I never respond. But cities in Oregon are required to do long-range planning. We are required to plan for growth. We get population projections from the state through Portland State University, and they say, we think your city is going to have X number of people moving in the next 5, 10, 20 years. You need to figure out how they're going to live there, how they're going to work there, how they're going to flush their toilets there, how they're going to travel around the city, how they're going to be able to turn on their faucet and have water. All of those things we are required to plan for. We don't really get to say we don't want them, so we're not going to plan for it. We have to plan for how all those things are going to fit together and work. So we do. And a lot of time, a lot of brain power and a lot of thought goes into how that's going to work. That does not mean we plan for necessarily bad examples, I'm sorry, but we're going to have a Walmart on this particular corner, but not a Costco. Planning does not go to that level. Long-range planning is not that granular. Cities generally don't make decisions, but they might say, this is a part of town where we think, for better or worse, maybe it's the right place for some big box retail, because that's something cities have down the road. And whether it's a Walmart or a Costco or whoever, that's up to the private side to figure out. But cities are essentially required to think ahead and decide how those things are going to happen and where. So a lot of effort goes into that in Bend, just like it does in every city in Oregon. Bend has just had a lot of growth because a lot of people want to move here, and there are certainly economic pressures, but other people see economic opportunities. So people are coming in and wanting to move here and wanting to build things. And we have an obligation to try to make that happen in the best and most coherent way possible. There's also current development that the city manages, and this is when Costco comes in and says, we want to put a store there. Your planning says we can do a big box store here. We're here and we want to do it, and we want to figure out how to do it, and we want to make sure the water connections work, and we want to extend a sewer line, and we know we're going to have to build a couple of roundabouts, and we're going to have to improve roads. So how do we do it? So this city spends a lot of time trying to make sure that happens in the right way. It's often a way that people don't like, but we really don't get to make that choice. We just have to manage it. Other things cities do. We regulate, sorry, I saw a hand, didn't see a hand. Okay. We regulate the urban environment. We have a noise code. It says you can't be really noisy before 7 a.m. and after 10 a.m. There are exceptions. We regulate signs. You'll notice in Bend, fortunately, we don't have that many billboards in Bend, and we don't have a proliferation of billboards. We are locked in at a certain number of billboards in Bend. One goes down, one can go in, but we're not going to see more generally than the number we have now, because we chose to regulate it so we are not just inundated with billboards everywhere. We manage the public right of way. That means public streets. And we have a lot of other things in our municipal code where we have authority to regulate. State government, federal government sometimes say, hey, we want to regulate in this area. We're taking up this space. Cities, stay out of it. We can't regulate in those areas where we are preempted in that way by a higher level of government, but where we're not preempted, we can regulate through our ordinances, which are city code. We do some regulation of business. It's not what I would say a severe or heavy-handed amount of business regulation in Bend, but we do some permitting and operating license things with our code for certain businesses. We impose and collect some taxes, fees, and charges. And then last but not least, and this is the kind of thing that I sort of hated to put last, but I wanted to emphasize it. We do core services, water, sewer. You know, you turn your faucet on, hopefully you have water. We do have a couple of private water providers, but most of Bend is served by City of Bend Water. We provide sewer services, maintain the systems, manage the systems, plan for the development and growth of those systems as needed. We manage public streets and we do public safety, and that's police and fire. Sometimes not everyone realizes that Bend Fire and Rescue, otherwise known as the fire department, and the Bend Police Department, they're units of the city. So the Bend Police Chief, Bend Fire Chief, they report to the city manager. They are city departments, really just like the Equity Department, just like our Community and Economic Development Department, just like the City Attorney's Office. So they are a function of the city, just like any other department. Okay, how does the city do things? We do things or rely on a few sources of authority for doing things. And these are listed up on the screen sort of in order of cascading authority. We've got a city charter. This is essentially the constitution for the city of Bend. It can only be changed by the voters. It is the highest level of authority. And if somebody asks our office, can we do something? Can council do something? How do we do something? And the charter does not address everything, but if the charter addresses it, that's the answer. That is how we have to do things. We can't ignore the charter. We can't avoid the charter. Sometimes you have a charter provision that might require interpretation, but the charter is, I hate it to say it, but if people say the Constitution is the supreme law of the land for the United States, the charter is the supreme law of the land for the city of Bend. We have ordinances. These are city codes. Some people will say, do you have a city ordinance on that? Or do you have a code provision on that? Same thing. An ordinance is the thing that the city council considers and maybe adopts that either establishes a code provision, deletes a code provision, or changes a code provision. And again, these are laws. Ordinances are laws. They are local laws. They have to be followed. They can't be ignored. They can't be waived, but the council can change them with another ordinance. They can say, we don't like this ordinance, we're going to get rid of it. Or we don't like this ordinance, we need to add a couple of words, we can amend it. So these are legislative things that the city council does because the city council is the legislative authority for the city. We've also got resolutions. These are also adopted by council. These are a little bit simpler than an ordinance. And generally what resolutions do, they can express a policy direction to council. They can provide direction to city staff. Occasionally they can be binding on the public. These are a little bit more flexible. They're simpler than an ordinance. There are fewer procedural requirements than an ordinance. Sometimes we have to do things by resolution because state law says the governing body can do a thing, but they have to do it by resolution. Sometimes we might just want to do something by resolution because the city wants to do something or express something, and a resolution just feels like the best tool. So these are things that council or a council considers during their business meetings. They do a lot of other things, but a lot of what they do is consider ordinances and resolutions. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the charter. You don't need to know all of this, but I think the important part here is that the charter is effectively the city's constitution, and a lot of things that the city does or the council does or ways the city or the council does things, I think sometimes people in the community think that's a dumb way of doing things, or they should do it another way. And that's fair, but a lot of the time it's because the charter says that's how you do it. We occasionally have a vacancy on the council. Maybe somebody resigns, they say, move on to something else. They're in the middle of their term. The charter has provisions about how that vacancy is filled. So the process for how that happens is outlined in the charter. The charter says it requires 4 votes of councilors for the council to take any action. It has requirements for elections and qualifications for running for council. It has requirements for how ordinances work. It provides that the mayor of Bend is now directly elected. That's a fairly recent change back in 2018. It used to be that the council selected the mayor. The charter provides that the council elects the mayor pro tem, which is again, Mayor Pro Tem Perkins. And our charter also has a provision that provides that what the charter calls direct sales taxes must be approved by the voters. So when the city does things or doesn't do things, it's often because the charter says it has to work that way. It's not usually the whims of the council or the whim, city manager or city attorney's office. It's because we go to the charter and look to that as our guiding authority for a lot of things. I'm going to move through this really quickly. This is just an example of a lot of charter provisions that go to how the council works. There are charter provisions that detail and confirm that the powers of the city are vested in the council. There, again, I mentioned the provisions in the charter about how council vacancies work. It provides that the charter provides that a counselor can be a city volunteer, but if you're a city employee, you can't be a counselor. If you're a city employee, I think you can run for a council and get elected to the council. But when January comes around and you get sworn in, you can't be a city employee. So the charter has all sorts of rules about how the city works. Some of them focused on the council, some of them focused on the city manager, some of them focused on the municipal judge. Now we're going to move into generally away from particular charter provisions, which it's just a blur of Roman numerals that you don't really need to think about. But generally speaking, what does it all mean? What does a council do? City council in Bend and other comparable cities, this is a very common form of local government, has what I would call an oversight and a policy role. City councilors are generally not involved in day-to-day operations. We have code provisions that say the council has authority to approve all contracts over $250,000. If there is a contract the city is considering entering into up to that amount, the city manager, or in some cases their designee, can authorize it. Council does the budget review and adoption. Council does a lot of that infrastructure planning and rate setting, that long range, big picture stuff. Council doesn't manage or direct employees other than the city manager and the municipal judge, although the judge is fairly independent, given that's the role of the judiciary, or at least it should be in this country. But we technically have two employees at the city, two people that report directly to the council, and that's the city manager and the muni judge. The rest of us, I work with the council a lot. I talk to council members every day, but I report to the city manager, not the city council. And councilors do not and should not get involved in personnel matters. I mean, sometimes something will come up and somebody will talk to a city councilor. Hey, this city employee, A, B, and C, X, Y, Z. The best response from a city councilor is, I'll pass that concern along to the city manager, but I don't manage city employees other than the city manager. There are, sometimes that is disappointing to people who think councilors should be able to reach out and do things. I think it is the right form of government for most cities, and for Bend, councilors are elected to do high level stuff and really listen to the community. But we have a city manager who's the CEO who kind of does the day-to-day stuff. Okay. Speaking of the city manager, there is a charter provision, and this alludes to that a little bit. We have a charter provision that says the appointment of the city manager shall be without regard to political considerations and solely upon the basis of administrative qualifications. I'm editorializing a little bit, but a good city manager should understand politics, but not really be political, right? They have to understand the politics of the council that they report to, but their goal and job is really to help that council navigate the structure of the city and build the goals and then carry them out. And those can change or be adjusted from council to council. A good city manager should not be overly political, and that's reflected in the charter, which essentially says councils shouldn't appoint city managers based on politics. It should be based on their professional qualifications and their skills. City manager has a long list of duties and a broad grant of administrative authority over city operations, and that's kind of how a council manager form of government works. You've got political leadership and community connections of the elected councilors and the professional administrative expertise of an appointed city manager. Again, they have to be really attuned to politics, but in my opinion, shouldn't be overly political. I think it's better for the community if they're not. It's the model is a CEO reporting to a board of directors. A city manager in this form of government is a CEO. That is what they're doing. Council is the legislative body, makes the laws, changes the laws, considers new laws, and through that legislative activity and authority sets the policy direction, and then the city manager and the rest of us city employees, we carry those out. That's what we do. The day-to-day stuff, the budget preparation, which is a process that's governed by state laws. We advise the council, city manager does, but we assist the city manager in that, a lot of city employees. And the city manager has supervisory authority over all city employees, really, except the municipal court judge. So that's how the system works. This is the modern form of local government that has developed and become the most common, and I would say most favored way to combine apolitical expertise of staff with political leadership of the people who run for office. And it combines democracy and administrative expertise in a way that, if done well, works pretty well for a community and hopefully leads to stability rather than these wild swings. And I am the system, I am part of it, so it's easy for me to say it's good, but I've been in other systems of local government that were very different from this, and in my opinion, they don't work as well. So I am a little bit of a cheerleader for it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Commissioner Eli, he, him. I want to know a little bit more about the city manager position. So is that like, are they working for a term length, or how
Nope.
long are
Nope.
they working?
City manager serves at the pleasure of the council, so council can change a city manager. They set the terms of the city manager's contract. So the city manager in a council manager form of government is accountable to the council. They're appointed, but they are generally considered an at-will employee, just like the rest of us.
And would we have the opportunity to speak with the city manager?
Great question. Eric King is our city manager. He does try to make the rounds when he can. You can write to Eric if you have questions. He's incredibly accessible. Again, big cheerleader. Eric really believes in the ideals of this form of government, and his job is to help council and carry out their objectives. So if you have questions about how the city works, write to Eric for sure.
Awesome, thank you.
You can also write to me, but if you have a city manager question, write to Eric. I mean, you can write to a lot of us. Okay. Here's where I'm going to get hover a little bit more closely to the work that you do. We've got a municipal code. That's our compendium of local laws, and there are sections in the code, chapters in the code that deal with advisory boards, committees, and commissions. And I'm going to summarize a couple of things right now. And this presentation has been used before. I did go count this morning to make sure that 8 was currently still accurate. I think it is. We have 8 currently active permanent committees, not counting budget committees, which come together during budget season. But that's 8 counting this group. So there are 8 advisory bodies that are what I would call permanent advisory bodies that are recognized in the code. The code has rules that apply to all 8 advisory bodies, including HREC, about appointment to the body, your status as individuals on the body and operations. These generally applicable code provisions talk about the authority of the body, which again is generally making recommendation to the council on matters germane to the particular body. No individual on an advisory body or an advisory body as a whole can bind the city. The code has provisions on how advisory bodies are or may be selected and removed, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the mayor and the council have discretion to put people on committees and to take them off. You, in other words, serve at the pleasure of the mayor and the council. There are general criteria in the code about appointment and things that should be considered when somebody is applying to be on an advisory committee. You can see them up there. We're just generally trying to find the people who can further the council goals at the time, have demonstrated some record of service or interest in service. Through our code, we say that we want backgrounds consistent with the skill set needed for the particular body. You know, the skills on this group may be different from the skills on another group. We want our advisory groups to have a balance of viewpoints, and we also want a balance of viewpoints among our different advisory bodies. and we should see representation of the broader community on our committee. So we have these values embedded in our code. And they're things that, while the mayor and council have discretion in making appointments, these are things that the council has said should be considered as they exercise that discretion. The code also clarifies that members of advisory bodies such as yourself are volunteers, and in most cases should be residents of the city. There are exceptions. If there's somebody that really wants to serve and they live just outside of the city and they have some special skill set, they can be appointed. But generally, the council, wants people who live in Bend. Digging down a little deeper and even closer to this advisory body, the code has provisions on what a TREC does. And I'm not going to read all of this, but I will just note there is a purpose statement. You know, it's interesting as I look at this purpose statement, this was written in 2020, and this was a combination or a compilation of input, ideas, desires, from a consultant, community groups, a task force, our office. It's interesting to me to think about whether this would be rewritten differently now. We're only 5 years later. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But there is a purpose statement in the code that I think generally captures the idea of what this group is supposed to be focused on. There are other provisions in the code, again, that really define what a TREC is supposed to do. So if you have those who are we and what are we supposed to be doing questions, look up Human Rights and Equity Commission in the Bend Municipal Code. And this is supposed to establish a framework for kind of where you're supposed to be operating. And we have similar language for some of our other groups, but it's
Ian?
meant to define the purpose and scope of what the group is supposed to be doing.
Hey, Ian.
Yeah.
Commissioners, if you look at the document that I shared just about every meeting, yes, there's some incongruency in what Ian's sharing right now. We have yet to do a formal code change. This is information from our previous, just the stuff revolving around ATREC is from our previous work, but there is a code change to align more with the work that we've done over the last 6 months that talks about the commission's purpose. It doesn't necessarily go into the code itself, which there is a code change coming. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that during the council goal setting process, I think it's possible that adjustments to some of the code language for ATREC and other committees could get considered. So, you know, things evolve, things change over time. Some work gets done. I don't think the mission or real priorities change that much, but some refinement of what these groups are supposed to focus on is kind of a natural evolution. And this, I mean, ATREC is still, as far as our advisory bodies go, it's a relatively new group, right? It's roughly 4 or 5 years old. As soon as Commissioner Fisher is done taking the picture, I'm gonna go. More of this, and again, this may change, but this is where I would maybe put some of the focus. And this is just cut and pasted from the code. And this is good timing. ATREC may advocate to the city council when ATREC identifies issues of community significance involving diversity, equity, and inclusion during goal setting or as otherwise scheduled by the city for advisory committees or for the ATREC. So we are in and on the cusp of goal setting right now. This is what our current municipal code says. So you know, there is a goal setting retreat Monday and Tuesday. That is not the end of the goal setting process. So as we talked about earlier, if you fire off an email to one counselor or all counselors about your input or thoughts as council heads into goal setting, the code says this is a great time to do it. I don't want anybody to think that if you don't get input to council by Monday morning, it's not going to be considered. Goal setting is an ongoing process. There's just this 2-day retreat next week that is really starting getting into it. But that's really what the council, when it adopted this code, was asking this group to do. So look to that and I don't maybe be inspired by that. This is the time. This is one of the times. I'm really about out of time. I just want to emphasize a couple of things here. You're all public officials by volunteering for this group and being appointed to it. That means you are subject to the same or very similar ethical standards as I am subject to, as Andres is subject to, as Lisa, other city staff are subject to. So congratulations. These boil down to a few key concepts. I want to just emphasize a couple of them. You can't, as a public official, use or attempt to use your position, and that means your position on HREC or any status that comes with it, to obtain a financial benefit if the opportunity for that financial benefit wouldn't otherwise be available but for the position held by you. So I'm gonna, a couple of long-range planners are here, and I was talking up their big brains earlier, so I'm gonna yield the microphone soon, but I do want to emphasize this. If somebody offers you something that is because of, or you think is associated with your position on this group, think to yourself, time out, and don't take it. And I don't think that's going to happen. People don't walk around Bend looking for advisory committee members to like slip gift certificates to, right? That doesn't really happen. But the point is that you have status here as somebody who's been appointed by the council, and you have a role, and you have an opportunity to advocate to the council and advise the council and make recommendations. Don't let that even inadvertently translate into something else. And I'm not worried about that. I just think it's important to emphasize to people who volunteer for these positions that you are putting yourself in a position to comply with a lot of the things that those of us who work in government get used to and are really accustomed to. And that's just being really conscious of not letting that happen, not getting something that other people don't get. So that's a reminder. If questions come up about this, you can always contact me. You can email me. I can give advice to all of you. We are all personally, individually responsible for meeting our ethical obligations. But if you have questions that come up about use of position or office, or conflicts or potential conflicts of interest, which I'm going to skip, if your radar goes off, just call me. The only problem with a conflict of interest is one that's not disclosed. It's not a problem to have one. I don't have time to get into it, but don't be afraid of any of it, and let yourself be curious and ask questions. You can direct them through Andres or me if you have questions about use of position or conflicts, and we can get it sorted out. But it's not something to be afraid of at all. I mean, we actually want people on advisory bodies for whom conflicts issues will come up because you're connected to community, you have expertise. It's not necessarily a bad thing for them to come up. It's only bad if they're not recognized. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Didn't get a lot of questions this time, amazingly, but if you have thoughts or we didn't cover something, just find my email and follow up with me. That's not a problem.
This is Commissioner Bernatico. Can we get a copy of that?
Yep, I'll send it to Andres, and you can send it to the group.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we can share that out. Andres Portela, he, him. Additionally, the abridged version are those documents that I'd shared prior to this meeting.
No, that was the abridged version that I just
The abridged
Okay.
version, with wonderful graphics from our comms team, is included in your handouts for tonight. I think understanding the City of Bend service and operations, when we've gotten presentations before, we're like, which department is this? That document was created for that. So you can immediately make the connection to the service and operations that we do. But additionally, your role as a commissioner, that second, the basics, briefly goes over counselors' roles, individual commissioners' roles, and the city manager's role. But again, Ian and I are here to help. If there are any questions, considerations, anything, we got you guys.
Thank you both.
Thanks, everybody.
And Andres, will you have the floor if you would like to continue with our standing item, the work plan?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull the slides back up. Andres Portela, he, him. I'm gonna pull the slides back up. Just know Chair, I told you 15 minutes. This is not going to take 15 minutes. This is me over budgeting time because I'm always afraid that I'm gonna drone on and talk too much. But in that, we've already gone over the work plan in general. I'm also going to have a moment that we discussed in our leadership meeting. Thank you, Jackie, for saying that I need to do this more often, is giving time to breathe after discussions. So I budgeted some of this time just to breathe and to converse with each other. Additionally, something that I want to say is it could be a welcome change is during our last meeting, we discussed how the table feels a little bit more comfy. I'm thinking during our next meeting, I'll have some of the tables up front. So if we do want to transition from having our work plan discussions at the dais to the tables, we can have that and feel like we're conversing with each other in a less formal space. But here's our focus areas. Our focus areas are education and awareness, community engagement, policy advocacy, and then again, that separate advisory role. That is the role that was assumed when we took this space, but always present in the work that we do. For the purpose of this discussion, I am largely only going to talk about the subcommittee model for our work plan. We've adopted the work plan. We've already said what we're committed to, and I'll go through each one separately and give some ideas of how we could do a subcommittee model. But the subcommittees would be for the three things that we've created goals around. The expectations we update during work plan standing item. So we talk about this as a fixed item. Quarterly updates on work coming up. So we would go in depth during each quarter and just say for the community, for education and awareness, we would talk about some education and awareness conversations that we're going to have for community engagement. We'd look at the next few months that the equity department has already scheduled and figure out how do we pair the resources of our department with the work that HREC is trying to hold. The third thing is the equity department needs to be involved in these meetings. I would hate for that incongruency to happen where y'all are like, let's do it. And then equity is like, y'all did it. So please, for this to work, you have to have someone from the equity department present. And for that, I'm going to ask that you just ask me to do it because I don't want to obligate the time of the whole department. But if I can't make it, one of us will be there in the stead. And then scheduling for subcommittees, that's amongst the subcommittees themselves. And then adhere to public meeting rules. The question is how many, so please don't go over the 4. So what we're looking at though is a potential time commitment for all commissioners at this moment. It's about 2 hours. That is the 2 hours that we have within this space. If we do the subcommittee model, it could transition to 3 hours for all of us and 4 hours for leadership. I'm going to pause there and say, are there any problems with that?
Before problems,
Yeah.
I would like to provide one token of thinking that it would give us the chance to have this space where we're all connected together to have more touch points and then do the action outside of this space. So we'll still be able to get together, connect on, okay, this is what this subcommittee is working on, this subcommittee is working on, this subcommittee is working on, and then say, great, these are our goals for the next time, and the work can still happen even if we're not all together. So that is my one token of a pro for this approach.
Any other thoughts, considerations? Go ahead.
Commissioner Linda Hemer, she, her. I recall earlier when I was appointed last August or September, it asked if I could commit 4 hours per month.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem onerous or a revision to our commitments early. So
Appreciate that. I think during the conversation on if you're willing to join HREC, we say 4 hours. We largely have not stuck to that 4-hour commitment, and that's just understanding the work that takes place outside of these walls. But I think the subcommittee model can allow us to think about the work that we're doing individually and partner with the city of Bend and specifically the subcommittees and the equity department to make sure there's representation from HREC and the equity department. If there are no other questions, comments, concerns about this, I'm going to go into each one and give you guys some ideas of what it could look like.
I have a quick question. Sorry, Andres. This is Adrian online. My assumption, but I'm checking for my assumption, is that the subcommittee model, I know there has been times where Ian has guided us that we can't really meet outside of, or too many of us can't meet outside of this meeting. And I'm really gonna mess up all of the legal semantics, but my assumption is that the subcommittee model allows for that, and this isn't outside of those rules regarding this meeting. Otherwise, you wouldn't be proposing it. But I guess I just want to ask that clarifying question.
That is a wonderful question and why I put it here to public meeting rules, no more than 4. And then also we are not making decisions during these subcommittees. we are coming back to the larger group and asking for permission and or having conversation and discussion about how we operationalize our work. So I think that'll get to the essence of some of the agenda, but Ian is sitting pretty close and giving me the side.
To walk up there for the fourth time.
Please.
Yes. Sorry, Ian.
No, it's a good question. Ian Lighthizer again. And I don't want to derail the discussion, because this is important. I will say that, and I don't know whether this needs further refinement or not, but if there is a subcommittee that is going to make recommendations to the bigger group, it's going to be considered subject to the public meetings law, which is not a huge deal. It just means the meeting needs to be noticed. It needs to be accessible. But that's something that Andres and I can work out. Some of it depends on what the subgroup or subcommittee or whatever it is called is tasked with doing. I think it is, practically speaking, it's a little bit difficult to, in the real world, to say, okay, subgroup, subcommittee, you go off and do something, and then you're going to talk about something, figure something out, and then come back. It's kind of hard to have that not include some recommendations to the bigger group. It's just sort of the way people are, right? Here's what we learned, here's what we think, here's what we think we should consider. But whether or not, this is a great structure and a great way to get work done more efficiently, even if the smaller group is subject to the public meetings laws. And it just means there are some procedural requirements that we need to go through in terms of notice, and still a better way to get, still a way to get more work done in addition to these bigger meetings. So I don't think it's a huge point, but we can figure it out to make sure that the legal requirements are met.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
That's Jackie. I guess I just would. It seemed fine until I just heard that. So now I'm like, are we gonna have to like have this plan so much in advance? And there's people we're gonna be trying to coordinate last minute, and are we gonna have to be making motions? Like, can subcommittees just talk like normal people, or do we gotta do movements and be up on things and record it? And I'm like, shit.
I think, me again, I think subcommittees can talk like normal people.
Okay, great.
I think the HREC can talk like normal people, and I think most of the time you do. There's just some administrative work that staff generally do in getting the meeting set up, but you can have a freewheeling, normal person discussion, even if it's a subcommittee subject to the public meetings law, in my opinion, but that's up to you.
Like in here and like live though, or whatever. is
Yeah,
what you mean
yeah,
by, like,
some of those public meetings requirements would still apply.
Would it, Agatha Ventura, she, her, would it be possible to explain in what ways we may be able to, in a subcommittee, do some work and bring it versus the work we're not able to do? What's the distinction, I guess?
The distinction, and this is probably something that other staff and I should talk about and flesh out and maybe come back to you with. But I'll say the requirement is, the requirement of the public meetings law is that if the group, whatever it is considered what the law calls a governing body of a public body, you have to do things in compliance with the public meetings law. Council is that, you are that, all of our standing committees in the code are that. You are considered a body subject to the law. The law also says that if a subcommittee, and again, don't get hung up on the word, a smaller group, a work group, whatever it's called, is going to go do something and then make recommendations to a governing body, that group is also subject to the public meetings law. So that's where I'm coming in. And some of this is probably Andres and I discussing offline about what the structure is supposed to do. And if there is a way for it to work and do meaningful work without coming back and doing something that is or feels like making a recommendation. And that's where I said, that's kind of how it goes. That's kind of what these groups are designed to do. You divide up some work, you take a chunk, you dig in, then you come back and make recommendations to the bigger group based on doing things hopefully a little more efficiently in the smaller group. But we can try to figure it out. But I think it's a good thing to pursue whether or not it's subject to the public meetings law. I think I'm here to say, don't assume that it's not. But if it is, we can figure it out. Yep.
Any other questions? All right, so I have some marching orders for the next in order to come back to y'all and be a little bit more efficient with this conversation. I do think that the subcommittee model will allow us to have discussions and not make big decisions and move bodies of work and refer back to this space. So I will have that conversation with Ian and then get a better understanding and refer back to y'all. So in our goals, we talked about developing outreach initiatives to engage groups and build trust with diverse communities. Some of the potential opportunities that come up around this specific goal are attending cultural events as ATREC members and wearing badges, something we've done before. We had ATREC badges at some point. Additionally, one thing we've discussed is potentially connecting our advisory bodies. COBAC is going to be doing this, but connecting ATREC to Welcoming Week and having a space in which we either facilitate an event or connect with COBAC to facilitate an event, but then also in community engagement, inviting groups into our ATREC meetings to present and talk about the work that's taking place with our community. But then additionally, I think Eli has done an amazing job of this because I've already heard from community connecting OSU, COCC, and older adults, folks that sit on the peripheries of our community and saying, please come into this space. And I only mention those groups because every time I'm out, someone says, Eli told me about ATREC. And so big ups to Eli. Additionally, on the policy advocacy space, two of our goals are develop and implement an equity lens to evaluate existing policies, ensuring they align with the needs of all Bend residents and advocate to improve when necessary to inform how ATREC will advise the council. I remember when we were discussing this when y'all were like, this may be 2 sentences. It felt breathy when I was saying it just now. Goal 2 was to collaborate with City of Bend staff to review city codes, analyze their impact of equity and human rights, and reduce barriers to marginalized groups. I think that partners well with the work the equity department is doing with that policy advocacy space. Our hope is to start creating that connection between the equity framework that we're developing internally and ATREC itself. And so what are some of those quick questions that we can ask as ATREC members in advice council? And so that's where we could potentially start doing in that space. And then for education and awareness, 2 of our goals are increase available information related to DEI, and then increase visibility to access to ATREC's work. I think there are some really great ideas, and I threw in one because we have someone in this space who already works with local in that education and local media space. The liaison role to COBAC and other spaces. So we have the potential for the growth plan. They're thinking of different ways to pull folks together. So there could be a committee there that an ATREC member goes into and then reports back. Potentially, if there's a BDAB space, the Bend Economic Development Advisory Board, if they do take up some of the work of supplier diversity, maybe having an ATREC member be in that space, understands the work of the equity department and reports back to ATREC, then thinking about how do we share our highlights or newsletter-ish with other advisory bodies or council, thinking about how do we share that information, or even taking advantage of how ATREC gets information out, invites people in, either through Suffs Magazine or KTVZ, which have already interacted with this space when we gave recommendations to council. We'll have to work together with the equity department and other folks to really hone in on that, but those are just some potential ideas. With that, I go to the last advisory role. We're already doing this work. You'll get a presentation from the folks in the growth plan right now. The hope is that we can use the equity lens that ATREC creates to inform that, so we have some unified language, but really we're headed that direction. And then let's talk. Let's breathe. I just talked a lot. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even are like, I love one of the specific spaces and the potential for some of these ideas, I want to take leadership and ownership in that space, I would love that. And I give it back to the chair for discussion.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments, concerns, qualms? We also have some roundtable scheduled for a little bit later, hopefully time permitting. So if you want to just dwell on it for a beat, we can have the next session start and then we can come back and talk. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Must I move for that?
Nope.
Great. Are we good with that? Great. In that case, let's move into some new business. Our growth plan with Elise Vukilic. Did I say that correctly? Vukilic. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thanks for having us back. My name's Elise. My pronouns are she and her.
And my name is Brian Rankin. My pronouns are he, him. And I think while Elise is loading this up, she asked me to step out of the presentation. This is a lot more formal than our last presentation discussion around the holidays where you had a party and we were sitting around a big table. So do my best to, let's just kind of step away from the presentation. If you recall last time, Elise and I met with you. We went through a pretty long slide deck. We talked about Oregon land use planning. We talked about a project that right now is being called, thank you, appreciate that. Called the growth plan. We'll probably rename that to something that's a little bit more snazzy as we get into the work. Provided some background and structure for engagement that is more focused on reaching folks that are not connected with the city of Bend, underrepresented communities, marginalized communities, and for us as a city in this project to do a better job. So just very simply, you know, we're going to be talking about in this project, which will last years, right? So this is not a typical city project that might occur over a couple months. This will be an opportunity to have years of conversation with the community on topics related to growth. And so what would those be? This is, hey, let's talk about housing. What kind of housing do you need? What are the characteristics and location of housing that you might need? What are your concerns and what are some opportunities about making changes to our transportation system in and around your neighborhood or citywide? What are your thoughts and concerns about growth? To provide education, to educate along the way, to receive feedback along the way in a whole variety and a wide variety of approaches and working with the community. So it's not just one approach. And so we have time. And I think the subject matter is very interesting to folks. People typically have an opinion about these things. And we'd love to hear it. And so the reason why we wanted to discuss the growth plan and your thoughts about different and better ways to work with the community, and especially communities that you're aware of, that you're concerned about, and that would help us in the project say, okay, we worked with HREC. We have a number of different approaches that HREC has suggested, maybe some do's and don'ts. It could be tactical. It could be any kind of advice. So that's why we're here. It's just to have a discussion about it and your thoughts about how to improve our engagement. We've been working with Andres, and he is a wealth of information. So we're not doing this in isolation, but it's really to have this direct conversation with you. So we can keep it at that conversational level. Elise has pulled up questions, but I think it's really simple. It's like, what are your thoughts when you hear about this opportunity? And through your experiences with the community and also with the city of Bend, how can we do a better job? And what would you suggest we do? What would you suggest we not do? We'll leave it at that. Elise, do you have any other
Yeah,
thoughts
I
on
just
that?
wanted to kind of repeat the feedback we heard from you all last time. First, we heard it's important to make it clear how feedback will be used. So be transparent about how it will be packaged and who will see it. And also make it clear to folks that engagement is shared with council, who's the decision maker on city business and not staff. We also heard parts of engagement should include education on what's already been decided, as well as decisions that council is making during the project. And also that education should cover not only state land use law, but how people will be impacted by these decisions. Is there anything I missed that comes to mind? Okay. I think we'll just go into question one. What questions do you have for us on the growth plan? And how can we improve our communication on this topic as we roll it out publicly?
This is Commissioner Bernatico. I feel like when we met last and right now, we're like in two different worlds. I believe that the feedback we gave is valid, and I think a lot of the points that were made are incredibly important, and they still are very relevant. But I feel like the landscape for all of these questions is entirely different than it would have been the last time we met. What barriers might exist to conducting equitable engagement for this project? Like many people who would need to speak on this who are, Hispanic or Latinx, even Indigenous folks are probably not so comfortable having those conversations anymore. And it makes me concerned about getting a truly, full spectrum viewpoint from our community. And I don't know what the answer is there, but I think it's important to at least raise that concern that I don't know what true engagement and what true multifaceted nature we're going to be able to derive from any of this work, given the current political landscape.
I would like to add, there may also be a couple of layers to consider. 100%, it's different intersectional identities will be impacted differently, as we discussed last time. But I think there's the bottom layer of, Bend resident, regardless of where you are, is going to be impacted one way or another. So my question is, how are you getting that feedback? And then with that feedback, are you providing resources for the people that are most impacted? So let's say one of the questions is around fire safety. You're expanding this amount. It's great to explain, one, that you have to expand this amount, as we discussed, like there are certain things that have already been decided and we have no say over changing. This may impact this group of people in the South, perhaps this much more because of geological things that I don't understand fully. And then if so, what resources are there currently in Oregon or citywide, excuse me, I keep hitting the microphone, and citywide that we could connect you with or provide or, make clear that they are available, knowing that you may be more impacted in one way or another. So that if, people are not necessarily able to say, I am Latina and, documented, not documented, whatever, there's still the question of how does your livelihood get impacted by this expansion?
I think I heard a question in there, and it's around what can we do? And I think part of it would be, I think you mentioned resourcing. First of all, how do we create more resources or bring more resources to bear to reduce the barriers in the first place? And that's one kind of resource, which I think is around, I know some different ideas around trying to get out. So we're trying to get out into the community and not say, stay in City Hall, for example. So having more customized conversations based on location, because I believe you mentioned like location, there are different impacts over here, over here, over here, over here. And so I think one idea, and this is why we're here, is to have this discussion, is to have this feedback, is to be out there and to do more tailored outreach in specific locations in and around Bend to address those unique opportunities, because there could be changes that are happening over here, but not over there, to discuss those and get that feedback that's more personalized, I would say. So that was one. Did I answer your question on that?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
It's more feedback of the approach, because I don't know all the ways, because there's also socioeconomic status that could be impacted. I know there's the conversation around affordable housing. Sorry, this is Agatha Ventura, she, her. I have gotten a reminder. I will try my best. Sorry about that. There's the push for affordable housing, which is a great thing, but I think that the way that people are impacted by affordable housing is differently, or the way that they view it is different. So I think getting some education about the positives of increasing housing, how many people are going to be able to, which I think a lot of it you already provide, but it's sort of catering it to being mindful of who's in the room, who's impacted in which way, and what resources we're providing for the people that are impacted.
All right. we will try. I think that is, I'm just going to admit, one of the challenges in doing this kind of outreach is because of the nature of the work, it's comprehensive, and we want people to engage. And so people come up, we've done, for example, events in parks and partnered with Parks and Rec and the Library District. And they see a city booth, for example, and we're just standing out there and the kids are eating ice cream and we're, somebody comes up, and the variety of questions that come to us, it's honestly, it's a challenge to provide good responses and good information, because it can come on it could be on any subject. They see City of Bend and then you're being asked. So I think part of what, and I might ask for Andreas's help here, but part of this is linked to how the city, in terms of the communications department and other resources, we're trying to create resources for people, informational resources, so that if they come and introduce themselves and provide some kind of input or have a question, that we can answer that more accurately and fully, even though I may not be the expert on it. Does that make sense? Or Elise is not necessarily expert. So I think that takes an organization-wide commitment to do that kind of work. And I do believe some of that work is already underway.
And I would also add that it's also gathering data, right, in those moments when you're getting some of the feedback in the communities. So I think it's a matter of gathering as much data as you can, and then looking across that data, what are the intersections that are impacted here in this direction? And I think from there, you can garner the resources to provide them. And it's an intentional way to say, hey, this seems like it impacts you in this way. We have these things that already exist. And then if there's something that we don't have, we can find a way to create that.
Excellent input. Thank you. Thank you.
I might ask more intently about question number 3 on approaches to engagement. I think the City of Bend does a lot of surveys. They do a lot of open houses. Do you have any other ideas or things you've seen other organizations do that are a little more creative that might be successful?
Cameron Fisher, she, her. I have seen a lot of organizations push into kind of partnerships where there's greater access to families and community members in different realms or venues in different ways. And I don't know, what the protocol is for city employees and that sort of thing, but just different approaches or different access points to have better accessibility for folks who can't come to your open houses or can't or don't see the survey or that sort of thing. And I mean, just what comes to mind are things that are just happening, public events that are happening that aren't city sponsored, where there's some sort of partnership. And I don't know how that might work, but whether it's with a school district or whether through its Parks and Rec or whether through, events. Yeah, I'm envisioning different, access points, and maybe that would be an opportunity, because what you're getting with some of the engagement opportunities are very particular populations.
Are there other suggestions along those lines? I love the idea, and we are doing that. I don't think it's as maybe as robust as we would like. For example, in our work, we've worked with the Vanza program at COCC. And we started the relationship with a project on climate-friendly areas, for example. But then Elise and Jennifer Knapp on our team have nurtured that relationship and say, okay, well, what else? What else? And so I think we're trying to host a career day, come on in and learn about city careers. Is that they're doing a new class. And so we're bringing them in to learn about city careers, for example. And I think we have a great partner there with that program that's yes, let's keep this relationship going. Are there other ideas that you might have that's building on Cameron's idea that she put on the table?
Just to follow up on that, I mean, I think of things like OSU, or I think of events that are, pulling in certain populations that the school districts do.
Yep.
Other maybe cultural festivities that might have, different celebrations, then not that I don't appreciate, the bike events or the environmental targeted focus of some events that we see a lot around Bend. But again, that's going back to a certain population. And so kind of, spreading, I don't know how to explain that, but yeah.
Adrian?
Hi, thank you, Adrian McDougall, she, her. I think, and I wish I had a better, I wish the thought was fully formed in my head, but as Cameron said, one of the things I've been thinking about from last meeting and this meeting is that, and I say this as a remarkably extroverted human being, some of these events tend to privilege extroverted folks, right? So like town halls, festivals, I love those things, but it also, if you're someone who typically likes to process, or maybe you're, so thinking about ways to do outreach, which would also get the very important feedback from folks who are not likely to stand up in a room full of 20, 30 people and say, I have this idea, right? And so maybe they could write in on a card or something like that. So I don't, like I said, I wish I had a better idea, but it's something I've been thinking about since we met. Is just how do we make sure that we're engaging people who aren't comfortable in big spaces and talking in front of people.
And sorry, Cameron Fisher, one more time. And people who don't want to go through the multiple steps to submit something online, which can be a real nuisance, I have to say, and really time consuming. And so I think I've seen, maybe it's, I don't know who of the city, but having a table with like a comment card or something like that, where it can be a little bit more subtle, but still accessible to large numbers. Because I know, city employees, their time is valuable and you want to get the most bang for the buck.
Agatha Ventura, she, her. I've been ping-ponging whether this is a good or bad idea. But listening to this makes me think that the right approach, it could be good, is to have a similar, maybe not official survey, but something where people could provide comments online. Because I know people have a lot of thoughts online, but I know that it would take a very specific approach to have helpful information submitted online.
This is Commissioner Scott Jones. Something that I've just been thinking about as we were having this conversation, that I had some experience with in another state when I was trying to engage a group different than me, and that this was Native American populations in the entire state, and really started to just have conversations where eventually I was invited into spaces that I wouldn't normally be allowed or part of. And then in that space, I found myself surrounded by, leaders of the tribe and community members who then began to ask me questions, and I was able to kind of start that dialogue. And just the fact that I had the willingness and openness to go be in that space, and without necessarily an agenda for them to then suddenly do something for me, allowed the conversation to expand over a period of time, so that the partnership that I had hoped would formed, but it formed in the way they wanted it to form. And it worked out really well for the folks that they wanted to have served. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
So kind of thinking creatively about who in our community might fit that, and then looking for leaders in that community who that we can then have a little bit of a conversation with to see if there would be ever any opportunity to be creative and be, one of you go like to house party or whatever it is to begin that conversation. And I use house party loosely, but something like that. And also, I think that to Commissioner Vernatico's point, if we can approach things in that way, we might be able to break or at least reduce some of the barriers that some folks in our community might be feeling, because we're not asking them to be in a place that they're uncomfortable being in.
I think that's a great comment. And I think what we've been talking about a lot throughout this process with Andres is just like the relationship building element of it and not just going to a community organization and immediately asking for something, but just, yeah, thank you for that.
This is Jackie. I don't have a fully formed thing, but I think that is what I think that I want to share. I've read and you all have gone over in detail like what this is, what you're trying to collect, what the, this growth plan means, and like I've got this in front of me, 2028, this, right? Like there's the things, but I think there's also maybe a piece of like how for some brains, like how big that is. Like it's hard for me to think about, I don't even know what I'm eating for dinner tonight, let alone thinking like forecasting what the city might look like in 3 years, let alone 20 years for other growth plans I know that we look at and blah, 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 right? And so if there's maybe ways, thinking through the different types of communication and like tapping into more of like the psychology behind like how it is that people think and process and maybe there's some of those events at a park or whatever where something could even be kinesthetically involved, having a bike there, having an example of this or that kids, family, all of a sudden parents have a whole different concept of what you're asking because they're seeing their child engaging right in that moment. Yeah, like, because it's like, wow, this is so much stuff and I've got thoughts and I'd love to just like say it. And then it's like, but I don't know if that even makes sense or like personally, I'm so kinesthetic. It's like, put me in a space and then maybe I can like give you feedback. And like, yeah, like really breaking it down into like, instead of maybe just like, we're focused on bike and pedestrian systems. What is that? The system of like the whole city of like, is it in conjunction with the people streets? Is it like, are there options that I could be given to like at least rank them in order for what I think would be? Because like, I don't know how to just express my thoughts on sewage, right? Like, I need to be given like some language to be able to be like, oh yeah, that one. I didn't know that was called that, but that one makes sense. Those my spew of thought.
That is, that is perfect, by the way. Thank you.
This is Carly.
Yeah.
I'm 100% the psychology behind it.
Mhm.
And to a certain extent, when I think about the housing piece of it, hope. Like I spent the morning looking at the ONA methodology and like the numbers in Bend. And I think about the like numbers under 120 for the next 20 years. And those folks showing up at these meetings and engaging, how do we put hope that they're going to have housing in the next 20 years? Where is that built into it? How is that a piece of it?
This is Commissioner Bernatico. To piggyback on everyone here, when I've tackled problems like this previously, I would do a thing called the communications inventory. So like trying to understand the demographics of the city, for instance, and who are the people who make up the city. And then thinking those as specific streams and how we are able to interact with and attack that as a problem, right? And I think when you see that broken up into demographics, then you can kind of then look at each one of those and go, what are the specific barriers that this community is facing in regard to X, Y, and Z? And maybe in my earlier comment, then you would be able to understand where security is an issue. But then also, like, you can go to Jackie's point, and really like help break down for each of those individual groups because those are all very different, right? Like how access to clean water and sewer affects this specific group, right? I think this isn't really a one size fits all problem. It's looking at the specific streams of communication that need to go out based on demographics.
This is Commissioner Linda Heemer, she, her. I've heard a few things and tools that are available. I heard Commissioner Jones talk about an innovative, kind of a design thinking approach, for lack of, nothing about us without us. I think it was Henry Ford who said if I asked the customer what they needed, they would have said a faster horse.
Mhm.
He gave them an automobile, but sometimes that's the vision of innovation. Jackie, and it's even in our Commissioner Curry, it's in our purpose, systems, systemic inequity, but a systems thinking approach and a power analysis map is what Commissioner Ruth was talking about too. One of the biggest barriers is sometimes it's the tip of the iceberg. Hey, we need affordable housing, but all those layers beneath it. And at the bottom of that layer is mental models that we need to change. Sometimes affordable housing just means you have a better wage, so you can buy the house at the at the fair market value. You have a better education at COCC or OSU, and you have access, and you have those educational pathways to understand how to borrow. And so the broader system, a systems approach, a power analysis, all those things are having, having a booth at a library. Who has time to go to a library if you're working 4 jobs? And affordable housing, what if it's out by the pipeline? And it's not safe. Congratulations. We made it affordable. So my point, the equity framework and the equity lens that we want to develop can be used for almost every short or long-term goal and solution, and framing it that way. And just a shout out, I didn't live there, but the city of Tacoma just published from 2018, they've had a long-term, they created an equity index that involved a geographical information system. And some of it was just put more street lights in the poorest neighborhood to allow for safe travel. So they're showing great success. It's been published. And one of their discussions and the use of that index was community engagement. So I just started to dig into that, and I'd be happy to share it with our commission.
Please do share it. And Agatha, I'm interested her to jump on that as well. And with your comment around hope, I think there's also the reverse, because we are all human and people will know that there are problems coming. And I think it's helpful to, once you start doing the data and everything, the data collection, identifying those problems transparently and saying, we know these things may occur. This is how we're thinking ahead of it, or these are the resources that could help you deal with these things that might happen, because some of these things will be out of your control, how people are impacted by this. Wonderful. I have one more comment available for the group before we move on. No questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to know?
This is, oh, sorry. This is Adrienne. I just wanted to say just really quickly, and I think Commissioner Ruth and Mayor Pro Tem, just some of the comments they've made are making me think of this. I think like we started our meeting today, just acknowledging that, this time, regardless of where you are on any political spectrum, it's just nerve-wracking and tenuous. And so I think I've been in other discussions this week where it feels like, why are we talking about any of this? Like there are really important, like everything feels very unsettling. And so I think what I've seen really great leaders do in the last week and a half, 2 weeks is just call that out, and thank you again to Mayor Pro Tem for that approach today. And just so I think as you're going through and talking with the community, like just acknowledging, just the temperature of what's going on, and not that every discussion has to address whatever is in the news at the moment, but just that, there's a lot going on, and this might not seem like everyone's big focus, but we're here to talk about it. And so I think it just, at least for me personally, it helps acknowledge it, and then it helps clear my brain to focus. What's that saying? Like be where your feet are planted. So it just helps create some mindfulness in the moment. I would be one recommendation I would have.
Thank you. And thank you both for coming today.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure more comments will come up and thoughts, so we will continue working with you. And I know there is a question in there on how we would like to be engaged moving forward. Personally, we would like to welcome you to this space anytime. And of course, you have Andres' information. If any concrete questions come up, we're here to help.
Thank you. Oh, and Linda Hemer, good luck. Thank
Yes.
you.
No pressure. Thank you. And commissioners, we have a few minutes for roundtable discussion. If we want to bring back our work plan discussion. And Andres, I don't know if it's possible to also have people send you thoughts and comments and their choice of subcommittee.
Feel free.
But also we have a few minutes now if you want to give us some thoughts.
Also, with the roundtable, you can talk about things coming up within the community, concerns that we've heard, ways for the equity department to connect, also opportunities for y'all to connect. I think the purpose of the roundtable is largely just an open discussion.
Commissioner Bernardico, I'm wondering if we can discuss the absence of Mr. Kitchens.
Yeah. So that was actually going to be in my equity department update in just a few seconds. This week we received a letter of resignation from Commissioner Kitchens, actually Vice Chair Kitchens. I think without editorializing, Jeff had to step down because of his profession and the connection between DEI or equity work and the larger national narrative. Jeff, his Commissioner Kitchen's desire is to still stay connected with the city. And so we're going to try to plug him in to different boards, committees, commissions, or something that allows him to still show up in this space. But really wanted to lean in and say that we are grateful for the work that Jeff was able to do in this space and really the connection to the work. Jeff was at every single community engagement event last year. Repping in the good work of ATREC, but then also being an amazing advocate to council. You will still see him within the community. You will still see him pop in and out, but definitely he wanted to keep it very quiet, but then also acknowledge that his space will, his absence will be felt in this space, and his absence was not because he didn't feel heart connected to this work. So.
Continue so.
With that, I'm curious how everyone else on the dais is feeling.
Not in response.
Personally, I am feeling a degree of fear, but a lot of energy to act. So I'm hoping, I know ultimately the core of our work is for good, and that's what I'm continuing to put at the center.
Commissioner Scott Jones. I have definitely had a lot of conversations over the last couple of weeks. A lot of folks, some of them full of sadness and frustration and fear, coming to talk to me, and that weighs heavy on me. And I think that you know, it looking forward in our current world is maybe sometimes challenging when we're just feeling all of that, all of the feels, right? At the same time, like this commission is a great example in the community that we live in, and we can do great work, and we can work together and build relationships amongst ourselves to help support each other, and kind of help see ourselves through challenging times, right? Community and connection are so powerful. So I'd encourage us to do that. I reached out to Andreas to see if I could get contact information for the commission, so I'll be trying to reach out so that there's a connection and support as we continue to do the good work that we get to do. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for bringing it up.
This is Commissioner Linda Heemer, she, her, 2 points. I hope we don't have to change the name of our commission. It reminds me of, now I already quoted Henry Ford, Aldous Huxley in A Brave New World. He called it Newspeak in his dystopian language. So I hope we can stand bravely behind words that have true meaning. Secondly, I know someone, actually my wife is on the Police Chiefs Advisory Council, and doesn't hold something with the city, but they had a presentation from someone talking about emergency, all the horrible things that could happen here by nature. And one of the things that came up was fire. And I know there was a lot of concern with natural and disasters and climate change. One of the things that occurred to me, though, if you look at in California, the loss of life, and in the Paradise Fire, where I know the prosecutor's office named and identified the bios of the 85 lives lost. And it's horrific how many could not leave their homes because of mobility issues, age issues, all inequities. The loss of life was based on the marginalized and the oppressed. So I'd love it if part of the planning at the city or even county level considers equity. You know, there's an app to tell you when to leave, but I can tell you a lot of people who don't have access to an app. So just the thought of the inequity of the loss of life and that risk. So maybe having someone come and let us know how we're considering that would be informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Agatha Ventura, she, her. Thank you for bringing that up. And that reminded me also that nope, I lost it. It was gonna be good, I promise. But it's around the work that we do, and I don't have time to remember, so I will save it for next time. Andres, you want to give us a quick equity department update?
Yeah, I'll do this rather quick. I wanted to share some information on the Season of Nonviolence. We have 2 folks on ATREC that are COCC affiliated, but this is a larger community conversation that takes place annually at 17th year. Just a few days ago, they had Reverend Tutu come and discuss belonging and justice and our shared humanity. It was a glass of water. It is what I needed in approaching my work, but then also was able to connect and really just it poured into me. And then additionally, belonging without othering. Some of the work that we do at the City of Bend internally with our staff is talk about bridging, and a lot of that work is encapsulated in that book club that started tonight, started today, but there's going to be some more opportunities to engage in that space. And then the Black History Month dinner on February 25th. I think it's in between our next ATREC meeting, but I'd love to see all of you there. City of Bend is a partner on that Black History Month dinner celebration. And so with that, I'll talk about our upcoming agenda, but before I do that, sometimes I do a little bit of an editorializing of the state of the world, and sometimes I feel like it's a lonely ledge. And in this, I'm going to talk about Ubuntu, which is something that was brought up during Reverend Tutu's discussion around I am because of we. And I think about in the moment that a lot of the federal legislation started rolling in, but then also as it was rolling in days after inauguration, the folks in community that reached out to our department in our office. And I also think about the number of emails of people who have stepped up and said, hey, I want to join ATREC. And so there is that larger narrative going on about exclusion and othering, but there's also that community tie that wants to get together and use either the work of the HREC commissioners, but also connection to this space. That I want to acknowledge that the community trusts this space and the folks in this space to be a part of. And so over the next few weeks, there are some spaces we're going to fill. And they'll be coming into this space to better understand our work, and some of them have listened in before. But I want to say that the work that we do individually, I am because of we. The work that we're able to do at the City of Bend is because of we. I only have a job because in 2017, both community and counselors said, we need to respond to equity. I only have a job because a lot of the work of our city manager and our council said, how do we operationalize this work and put it into council goals? And the commitment of HREC to continually show up and also give the feedback like, hey, this isn't working or this is working. I appreciate that trust. And so I say, we as a group, I'm going to continually need y'all. And I think community is going to continually need y'all to show up both in the sentiments and hearts, but then also that systems change work. Our department is going to partner with you on that systems change work. We're just really going to need that help. And then also extend that how do we show up as an equity department in the spaces that y'all are working in? Is it just showing up and being a person in the building? Or is it, do you need a co-conspirator, or do you need somebody who's going to be that brain trust to bounce ideas off of? I am signing up for that, and I know that my team has signed up for that, and I know some of the liaisons and other folks have signed up for that to be that person. But we're here. Use us. In that, I'll stop my little editorialization. I'm going to jump over to the agenda and say that Lindsay is going to come and talk about the language access plan. We had a plan to do this work over the last few years. We have started to operationalize that plan. The policy has changed. We want to talk to you about our communication strategy to make sure that we're multilingual within the next year. And we're really working really hard on that. We're also going to have the target sector analysis by the Growth Management Division. You got a presentation by them today. You're going to get another one next meeting. And then some more conversations around the work plan. In March, you're going to get a full update by the Equity Department. Hopefully we can have ODOJ come in between February or March, but I just want to say that's a placeholder. But the Equity Department's going to go over training that we're doing for all staff. We're going to talk about the equity framework. We're going to talk about supplier diversity. And then we're going to talk about accessibility programming and our connection to the City of Bend Accessibility Advisory Committee. And then lastly, we're going to go over our standing item of work plan. So just continually to hear that message. I know that we're over time. I already heard one addition to the work plan, to the work to come, was that presentation on emergency management. We have a really great emergency management team that has taken some of those considerations of equity. And so I would love to have Carrie, Carl, and team be a part of that. And I'll have them, I'll talk to them on when we can best do that. And then having some of our communications department talk about some of the communications we're going to do with community outreach and making sure we get a broader swath of community representative. So those are 2 items that I heard within this meeting. Are there any more that we'd like to hear from? And sorry for running over. And with that, if there's nothing, I'm going to turn it back over to our chair to adjourn.
Thank you so much. Quick note, I remembered this work includes everyone in one way or another. And so I want to also focus that in our work as a reminder in those emergency moments. In the end, the community is everyone, and everyone will be impacted one way or another. With that, if there is no further HREC business, I will adjourn us at 6:39 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.